This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Show. I am your guest co-host today, the Philly Sports Guy, filling in for Mac, and I'm also here with Hall of Fame boxing writer Jack Hirsch. Morning, Jack. How are you this morning?
Hey, good morning, Pags. I'm used to you, so even though you consider yourself a fill-in, to me you're a regular, so we don't miss a beat.
Well, normally I'm
tremendously. I mean, yeah, I'm sure but you won't get on me as much as Mac will. I'm sure of that.
Well, I feel like now you have a whole show to get on me. I figure the first thing that we were going to wind up talking about was the Flyers, but they haven't really had much to talk about, so I guess we can bypass that already. So, although the Rangers lost game one, and the hockey playoffs are still going on, even without the Flyers playing. And it seems like there's not really any interest in that whatsoever. But
a lot of heartbreaks, Pags, during these Stanley Cup Finals. I mean, I was in Florida for a good part of the winter, so I got to keep an extra careful eye on the Florida Panthers, and they seemed, that this might be their year. And to lose a game with a few seconds left to get scored on a defensive lapse to go down 2-0 to the defending champion Tampa Bay Lightning, that had to be a heartbreak, especially when it's two Florida teams. You know the feeling. That's like your Flyers losing to the Penguins if your Flyers were any good in that type of spot.
Exactly.
It was heartbreaking, not to the Penguins, anyone but the Penguins.
Well, and I wonder how Florida is going to be able to recover from that, because ultimately, Florida was the number one team, but I've been saying all year long, I thought it was Tampa's cup to lose. After winning the last two, that team just knows how to turn on the switch and knows how to play in the playoffs. Florida has a lot of, young youth that haven't had a lot of playoff experience. And I felt that that's really where it came into play here. That's where you were going to see most of the veteran leadership of the Lightning be able to come through. And I still think it's their cup to lose, and unfortunately, because Giroux is playing on the Panthers. But, I still feel that although Calgary is making a big wave over in the Western Conference, it's
but
like
if the Lightning do win a third consecutive cup, yes and no, are they a dynasty? 3 in a row in the modern sense. 3 years isn't a huge body of work per se. When we think of dynasties, we think of at least a decade. But let's be logical about this. We're not going to have that again, where teams are going to dominate over 10, 20-year span. I don't count the New England Patriots. Even they, 6 Super Bowls in 20 years, that's 30% of the time. They were, they had won it. I mean, that's the closest we're going to get. But now Tampa, 3 cups in a row if they do it. Dynasty in that.
Yeah, I mean, well, and, I'm a firm believer that winning begets winning. And Tampa as a whole, I mean, you had the Rays in the World Series a couple of years ago. You have, obviously Tampa Buccaneers winning the Super Bowl. Then you have the Lightning winning the Stanley Cup back to back. I mean, and they only have 3 sports, and it makes me think, I was alive in the 1980s when Philadelphia was the golden era of sports. And it was the only time that any city had 4 consecutive teams in the championship, in the finals. But when you think about it, Florida had the same thing, because even though Tampa doesn't have a basketball team, the Miami Heat were in the NBA finals. So, and that's not that far away. I mean, it's a couple hours, but even still, to have that whole region be in the finals, all 4 of those, for all 4 is pretty, impressive. So, yes, I would say for a modern day, for a team to win 3 times in a row in any sport in this day and age, especially when you have free agency and the amount of money that's being put into there, that is a dynasty. I mean, you would call the Dallas Cowboys of the 90s a dynasty, and they won 3 times in 4 years. And who knows how many more they could have won had Jerry Jones had, a little bit less of an ego.
I don't know. I don't know. Would I go for that? I know they won the 2 in a row. Then they lost the 1 year to the 49ers before winning another one. The 49ers had an exceptional team. Who's to say the Cowboys would have beaten them? And the 49ers beat the Cowboys the year after Jimmy Johnson left with Barry Switz as the coach. But Switz was the coach the following year when they won the Super Bowl. And if you look at Jimmy Johnson's body of work when he went to Miami, he was an okay coach, but he didn't improve on what Don Shula did there. So I don't know, do I necessarily buy that whole theory? Jerry Jones screwing it up. Jimmy Johnson, by all accounts, wanted to leave anyway and wasn't going to hang around. So I don't know that we put a particular blame anywhere.
Well, and I thought that he was only looking to move on, mostly because he was, he didn't like how Jerry was kind of talking with him. It was like Jerry felt like that he was the one that was totally in control, and Jimmy felt like he was the one that should be totally in control. And ultimately, they split ways. Then
he wanted to live in Miami, I think. I think it was a lifestyle thing. You have a chance. Look, he was a Miami Hurricane head coach, so he was used to life in Miami. He had roots in Miami. He had an ambition to go back there. And the Dolphins still had Dan Marino. And Jimmy Johnson didn't know Dan Marino was going to start his decline as Jimmy Johnson got there. So if you have Dan Marino waiting at quarterback in a good team, a decent team, you feel, I want to go there. I could live there. I could maybe win a Super Bowl there. But, didn't quite work out. They weren't that bad. They went to the playoffs 3 out of 4 years. But basically, they mirrored what Don Shula did all those years.
Right. And that's kind of, and ultimately, when he got to Dallas, he had Herschel Walker. That whole trade set Dallas up for years. And he didn't have that in Miami. You didn't have that type of cash, in essence, to be able to just, start to rebuild your entire organization, which is what he did. I mean, obviously, I remember he going 1-15, that first year, and just getting beat up all the way around. And then, of course, it just takes a couple of years, and next thing you know, he's in the Super Bowl and going back-to-back Super Bowls in 3 and 4 years. So, I mean, he was absolutely a great coach. I mean, and this was after he had won the national championship, but had brought the national, his team to the national title. I think the same thing, 3 out of 4 years. Because I remember that it was, Jerome Brown. That was the whole Jerome Brown team that he didn't want to. They didn't want to have dinner with Penn State. The alumni were having this big dinner before the Orange Bowl, and Jerome Brown said, "No, we don't. The Japanese didn't eat with the Americans before they bombed Pearl Harbor." And I remember the kicker from Penn State saying, "The Japanese lost the war." And then Penn State won that national championship. I think it was the really only true national championship that Joe Pa actually won. So,
okay. Yeah, I mean, you were talking before at the start of the show about certain cities, like all their teams combined, how good they're doing sports-wise. And once in a while, a city's going to go on a run. Like the term Titletown USA was started with in Pittsburgh when they had the Steelers and the Pirates together, as champions. And New England, not that long ago with Brady, they'd win a Super Bowl, and the Red Sox would win the World Series, and the Celtics would be up there for the NBA title. So it was kind of like a dynamic time. I mean, you're not quite having that impact in Philly right now. It's kind of a struggle. The Flyers are irrelevant right now. The Phillies are barely hanging, and they still might make some noise this season. We're not discounting them. They might make a run at the division title before it's over if the Mets falter just a little bit and open up the door. The 76ers, you wonder whether going forward they're going to advance. I think with the Sixers, the one thing they're not going to do is be stagnant after next year. Either they take a serious run towards the NBA title or they slide backwards and they have to kind of reboot, if not rebuild. And I think the big issue is Joel Embiid, keeping him happy. Pags, I don't know whether the Sixers could keep Joel Embiid happy. I think the only thing for sure that could keep him happy is an NBA championship. He wins that, he'll be a smiling big man. He'll be good. But if they have another disappointing year, Joel Embiid might very well force the issue. And it's easy to say, oh, the Sixers aren't going to trade him no matter what. They're going to play tough. But they said that with Ben Simmons. And let's be honest about it. Any NBA star, if he wants to bad enough, could force the issue. And of course, the Sixers would get a boatload in return for Joel Embiid. But trading Joel Embiid, I just can't see it helping, at least short term.
Well, it's hard to fathom, what a trade with Joel included, like even in a couple of years from now. I mean, because ultimately he's not getting any younger, and the way that he plays, he's always putting his body on the line. So ultimately, that's one of the fears that you had. He started out, he was a little injury prone. Of course, he played more games this year than he ever has, and I feel that next year he probably will play even more so, because I think first and foremost, he has the MVP title on his mind. That I always kind of felt that, even as a Philadelphia fan, that he has always had the MVP first and winning a championship second. That he wanted to be listed as the best player in basketball.
Did he deserve it this year?
I agree. I felt that he did too. And I felt that
he did.
Yeah, when you hear some of the things that happened, where some of the people who had votes didn't even watch some of the games and listen to their interns. Their interns made the pick for them because they didn't watch enough NBA basketball, and then to see some of the stuff, like they're like, oh, I should have watched Joel more because I listened to you, and you're the one that said you're from New York and you're a Philly hater, and that's the reason why.
But Jokic got it. Was Denver that good this year? How valuable was he for Denver? He's obviously very valuable. But what I'm saying, the Nuggets were in a force this year.
Right. I agree. And he's not a two-way player. He was a defensive liability, where Joel is typically first or second, team defensive player, all NBA. And I just feel that I feel that Joker, to win a back-to-back MVP, I feel that you have to be better than your previous year, and he didn't. In fact, his numbers were slightly under what he did last year. So, and then it was the first time a center was, led the scoring, in the NBA since, I guess, since Shaquille O'Neal did it. So it's been that long of a time. And of course, Shaquille O'Neal won the MVP that year because it was that important. So I feel like that this is still part of the media hate to the process. That the process that the Sixers went through, because they verbalized the fact that they were tanking to try to get 3 players specifically to try to win a championship, and that was the only way that they felt was a good way of going about it. And, Hinkie, for all of his flaws, he wasn't quiet about, I think that if they just weren't as loud about it, they probably wouldn't have got as much media attention. However, I mean, at one point, I think it was very early in the process, the team won 3 games in a row out of the first 7 games. And immediately they had to send people down to the D League because they just didn't want to take the chance that these guys were going to win anymore. They proceeded to win another 5 games for the rest of the year. And it was I think they were at one point 6-3, and then I think they won 11 games all told, and that was part of the process. And then you hear about all the stuff with the Jimmy Butler stuff in terms of how they chose Brown and then eventually Tobias Harris over Jimmy Butler, and that was how Tobias Harris got
Well, I
his
think
max
Ben
contract.
Simmons was in the equation.
Well,
thing
he was.
Tobias Harris and Ben Simmons over Jimmy Butler. I don't think it was a coach Jimmy Butler thing per se, because I think Brown was on a bit of thin ice regardless.
No, that's what's come out in the media here is that they had Brown was the one because Jimmy Butler was making a kind of a coup within the locker room against Brown. Him and Brown egos clashed tremendously, and that it necessarily wasn't Ben Simmons. Although everybody thought he didn't like playing with Ben Simmons, that was how it was portrayed. The truth of the matter is that I guess Butler was making some waves in the locker room. Ben wasn't as receptive to those waves. So like that would be looked at as he's kind of siding with Brown. Really, he wasn't siding at all because Ben Simmons, amongst everything else, is just wishy-washy.
Well, Jimmy Butler has an edge to him that's kind of iffy. I don't know what to make out of Jimmy Butler. I mean, he's been on a few teams. He started out at Chicago with Tom Thibodeau, and he was at Minnesota with Tom Thibodeau a while, but then Thibodeau left from there. Then he went to the Sixers. Then he went to the Heat. A guy who's that good of a player doesn't move around as much. And I know you could say LeBron has had a few stops, but LeBron has done all that by choice. If LeBron never wanted to leave Cleveland in the first place, there's no way the Cavaliers ever would have parted with LeBron to begin with. But imagine that. Had LeBron never left Cleveland in the first place, he never would have had one championship. They wouldn't have drafted Kyrie Irving. They wouldn't have picked that high, at the time, Cleveland, to get him. So as it turned out, it was a good move by LeBron. But with Jimmy Butler, you kind of wonder if he was a good soldier, at least at Philadelphia, would they have moved on from him? If he bought into everything and was, and didn't create any waves, you kind of wonder.
Well, yes, you do wonder how far they could have gone. I mean, they literally missed going to the conference finals by a quadruple bouncing ball, from Kawhi Leonard. Literally had that ball missed, who knows what could have happened. And, to see then a couple of years later that Butler takes a team, they were an okay team, but they were a ragtag team for the most part to the finals against LeBron.
Game to 6 games too.
Yeah, and totally on his back. And I feel that it was totally on his back that they beat the Sixers. I mean, anytime they needed a bucket, the Heat pulled one off. They just gave it to Jimmy, and Jimmy, that's why they call him Jimmy Buckets. You know what I mean? He was able to put it in the hole.
The greatest individual performance I ever saw basketball-wise was Allen Iverson getting a win over the Lakers in the opening best 4 out of 7. And, of course, the Sixers got demolished the next 4 games. But the reason I say it was the greatest
they didn't get demolished.
Let me say why it was the greatest achievement, because the Lakers were so much better than the 76ers. The 76ers weren't in that Laker team's class. And the idea that they could actually win a game over a team that was so superior to them, was awesome on Allen Iverson's behalf.
I would agree. However, people seem to forget in game 2, the Sixers were only it was a weird foul call away from winning that game. And, had they gone up 2-0, who knows what the series could have been. Now, once they came back to Philly, I mean, it really wasn't a series anymore. At that point, they just, they lost game 3, and then game 4 was a blowout, and then the Lakers came back and won game 5. But at that point, it really was all about, like I said, had they gone up 2-0 in LA, whole different story, because they really did play the Lakers really well. But I'll never forget, because I remember watching game 4 specifically, and Olajuwon literally putting all of his weight on Shaquille O'Neal. Like, his legs were spread out and back, and he just was resting his entire chest on the back of Shaquille O'Neal, and Shaquille still overpowered him to get to the basket. And you just knew at that point that the series was over. There was nothing else that was going to be able
Greatest sixer play of all time. I mean, do we count Wilt in this or consider
I do.
Wilt? Yeah, if we live, okay, a second greatest, Allen Iverson, Joel Embiid, or maybe Dr. J.
Because I grew up during that entire time, Dr. J is still on that list. I mean, Allen Iverson is like over iconed Dr. J now, but I would say that they are probably 2A and 2B, and then Joel Embiid he has to just get the longevity.
Well, you have enough. You could consider Dr. J a net. He played a couple of championships in the ABA. That counts. So you could maybe.
No, that's.
But then some people are going to say Kevin Durant or Dr. J.
Got you. Well, I would say Kevin Durant or Dr. J. I think Dr. J was more innovative for the time. Kevin Durant is a great player, but you got to get that.
Dr. J didn't really play defense, and that Sixer team that lost to Portland, I could never forgive them. I could never forgive that team. I mean, Portland was united. They played as a team. The Sixers played as individuals, and it was like distorted. It was like
that was that Bill Laimbeer team, wasn't it? There's that Bill Laimbeer. No, what's his name? Bill Walton.
Bill Walton, Maurice Lucas. It was just to let that get away. I hate that when a team is up 2-0 and they let a series get away. I mean, how can you beat one team 2 games in a row and then sometimes lose 4 in a row to them? Look, it happened last year with the Phoenix Suns going up 2-0 against Milwaukee, a team that's not necessarily better than them, yet Milwaukee wins 4 in a row. A lot's been going on, Pax, in the news with Patrick Beverley and Chris Paul. Him making all these statements about Chris Paul. It's easy to make Patrick Beverley out to be the bad guy. And Patrick Beverley sounds like a bitter individual. He's making it sound very personal. And if Patrick Beverley would have put it in a nicer, more diplomatic way, you'd think of his points a little bit more. Because I'll be honest, I never considered Chris Paul as good a point guard as some of the others, like Jason Kidd, for example. I would rate ahead of Chris Paul.
I'm going to slip him in here just because he's been sitting backstage for a second. Let him talk about a little bit of basketball. We're always talking about football. How you doing, Byron?
Hey, good morning.
Listen, you should know by now, Byron knows more football than any of us, but when it comes to the other sports, Byron doesn't really follow them.
I know quite a bit about boxing.
100%. He knows more football than you and I will ever know combined, but other sports, I don't know about. I just think Byron, he'll sit back, he'll watch the game, but I don't know whether he understands the other sports. So, Byron, how do you respond to that?
Hey, you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head. So I know a lot about football, that's for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, but right now, I mean, you live in Dallas currently. The Mavericks are in the conference finals. I mean, there's got to be some type of excitement that's building around that. The stars are out now, obviously, in that overtime game 7. So unfortunately, that's hockey's done in Dallas, and.
Don't forget the Texas Rangers. They're 3 games under 500. They're actually a little better, teeny bit better than we thought they'd be.
Yeah, I took my grandsons to the game last Friday against Boston, and we had a great time. And it's exciting just to go to the Globe Life, the new stadium that they built. But they trying to play some competitive baseball right now, anyway.
Yeah. You take them to a baseball game, it's more relaxing than a football game, because a football game, when you're really watching each play kind of intensely. Baseball, it's just more relaxed. I think it's more like a social thing. For a fan, it's more social than competitive when you go, unless it's a really big game. But football is competitive all the game. I know Pags, when he goes to the games, I mean, he's very emotional for the Eagle games. He's into it, but I can't imagine him getting nearly as into it for a Philadelphia Philly game.
Yeah. But
you haven't seen me at a Phillies game.
Yeah, we had a good time, man. I mean, we went to the suite. So it was a little bit different when you go to a suite. And but we went out there on the balcony, and the boys were just yelling and trying to get on the camera and all of that type of stuff. But it was really fun because every now and then you get a pop up and a foul ball, and you think it's coming your way. So they trying to catch a ball and so forth. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
But your boys might. But Byron, your boys might like baseball so much they might say, "The heck with football. This is what we want to do." Kind of like Kyler Murray.
Exactly.
Kyler Murray football.
Exactly. That's why I'm taking them to some baseball games. Let them get used to some baseball because football is a so-so game, man. I played it since the fourth grade, and I just looking at my body now and thinking about all the wear and tear that's on my body, it really, sometimes, is it worth it or what? But it's so competitive, and people just love the game because of the nature of the game, and everybody has their favorite team, their favorite players and stuff like that. But, it's exciting just to play. And then it's exciting to score a touchdown in the National Football League. So, that's a little boy dream.
So, well, let me ask this question, because you do live in Dallas, and obviously you're a Giants fan. Are your kids Cowboys fans?
They are. They my grandboys. I call them my kids, but their dad is he grew up here in Dallas as well, and he's a huge Michigan fan as well as Cowboy fan. That's what all they have. That's all they talk about in their house. So when I go there, I take the Giants stuff, and they can't deny it. But yeah, it's a constant battle.
Hey, I understand. Hey, listen, I the mother of my children was a Cowboys fan from Dallas. So, there was, and I found out very late. It was already too late. She was already, 7 months pregnant when I found out that she was a Cowboys fan, because it changed things. I told her she could pick the religion, but I picked the football team. And that's how we lived it in our house.
Right.
So, but anyways.
But it's good. It's good to have that competition. I meet a lot of couples that they cheer for one team and the other one cheer for the other team, and it's always a constant battle, And during those seasons when the team have a good season, they get the right to make all the decisions in the house or something like that. You can always have those kind of wars and things like that.
Right. So, and I like those wars. I mean, it's fun for me.
Speaking of wars, let's talk about the Eagles and the Giants here. Let's because you're running upswing packs with the Eagles. The Eagles are making a lot of nice moves. They're looking better and better.
So, yeah, you know what? Since it was a good segue right into what I wanted to talk about with you primarily. Bradbury going to the Eagles. Now, the first thing, I mean, you kind of had a very similar situation. You weren't with the Eagles for very long, and then you went to the Giants. And even back then, I felt that the Eagles and the Giants were a lot more, they were real rivals. And then, of course, the Cowboys were always there, but it was the Eagles and the Giants that was a real rivalry. When a player does make that move to go from one team to the other of a rival, how is that perceived within the locker room, amongst the locker rooms that they left?
I think it's perceived really well because that player coming in know everything, know all the insides of that team. And it's amazing that he can tell the little thing about the receivers. He can tell the other defensive backs some things about the offense and the style. He can tell the tendencies of Daniel Jones. Maybe he liked to throw certain types of routes. This guy got a little bit more in-depth knowledge about what they do, what the tendencies are, and things like that. When my first game against the Eagles, when I went to the Giants, I had 167 yards against the Eagles, and my best NFL game. So I was pumped up, fired up, excited to play against the Eagles. And man, after the game, a lot of my old teammates, Mike Quick and all those guys came up and say, "Byron, man, we should have kept you," and which make you feel good. But, the nature of competition, the nature of the beast, you hate to see guys that play in rivalry, competition like the NFC East. And hardly ever you see that. But this day and time with the free market and the way players can go and move is different. But when players go and play their old teams, it brings some excitement, it brings some things that you want to say. I want to show not only the team, but I want to show the fans what what they had on this team. So it's very competitive, and a player take it on their own and say, "Hey, I'm gonna have one of my best games against my former team."
But aren't there mixed feelings, Byron? On one end, you want your old teammates to do well because they're friends of yours. On the other end, you don't want them to do so well without you. You want them to think, wow, I'm not with them anymore. You see, they should have kept me. So they're kind of mixed feelings there, right?
Right, exactly. It's always going to be mixed feelings because you still got some, you got some emotional lift of still wanting the best for some of your close teammates. Because some, relationships is for life, and so you're exactly right. You still got some mixed feelings about the team, but you do too. It's a career, and you want to make sure that you can go on and get to the Super Bowl and win games, and that's what's important as well.
Let me just say this with Pax. Pax mentioned James Bradbury is going to be playing cornerback for the Eagles. He's going to be going up against the Giants twice during the year. The receivers who he practiced against, he might be going up against, unless someone's, new or whatever. But who has the advantage? The cornerback, Bradbury, or the receiver?
Well, I think I would say if they hadn't changed coaches and hadn't changed a lot of the things that he's familiar with from last year's staff, he would Bradbury would have the advantage. But now with new systems in there, it might be even kill. I mean, it just depends on what the game plan is. And if players are healthy. Last year they didn't have their top running back, so I think this year it's probably still 50-50 because of the game plans and the things and the tendencies that these teams have to change going against certain types of defenses and things like that. So I think it just depends on that week in preparation. But I think if I was the Giants receivers, I would want the challenge because they playing against two good corners, and these guys are real tops in their position that's playing in the National Football League. So I'm thinking that the Giants have a lot to prove. They, and unfortunately, they just couldn't keep him because of the salary cap.
Right, and it's funny when you think about it, it's all due to money. Mm-hmm. And I know that the Giants, like Gettleman, really kind of cash strapped the Giants because of some of the contracts that he put out there, and unfortunately, he was one of the ones that they'd get a lot of cap space back by cutting. So, and I guess how frustrating is it for Bradbury, who literally was supposed to make $21 million? You have a mindset. Maybe you think, oh, well, I guess I could get cut because of this money type of situation. But you start planning your life for the fact that you're going to get paid this amount of money. Then all of a sudden you don't get paid that money. You get cut. And now you got to go. Does that go into some of the thought where he may have been able to say, hey, well, somebody may, the Green Bay Packers may have wanted to give him $11 million or $12 million, but because he had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder for the Giants, he decided to go with the Eagles. Now, I'm only going with possibility. I have no idea if he got any other offers from any other teams and if that was any more money than what he got paid for by the Eagles. But would you think that a player does have some of that in mind?
Absolutely. And plus, he only signed a 1-year contract. So he's thinking, if I go and make the Pro Bowl this year, I can, go in at the negotiating table again next year and make the money that I need, because most of the money that he gonna get after this season, a lot of it gonna be guaranteed money, right? So I'm thinking that he's in a real good position. I think now he needs to stay healthy, stay focused, and have an awesome season, because now, if he can go to the Pro Bowl and become the free agent that he wants to, he gonna get that. He can make up for the money that he lost, even though it's maybe $10 million or whatever. But I think he's really sitting in a good position. I just think he just needs to stay healthy, stay focused, and then help the Eagles win. And think about this: the Eagles might want to offer him a 4 or 5 year contract.
Is he that good? I never saw him being that good of a player. What you're talking about, 4 or 5 year contract. I'm surprised the Eagles picked him up at that price. I'll be honest. I don't think he had that good a year.
Yeah, I think he's good. I think he was ranked in the top 100 players last year. And
actually, so as of right now, while being paired with in the Eagles cornerbacks. They are now they elevated themselves by the way that the two of them is statistically as the best, defensive backfield in the NFL.
Yeah, in the
with
last
the
6
pickup of
years,
Bradbury.
I would say in the last 6 years, Darius Slade and him are the two top defenders for us knocking down balls. So I think they do have a lot of skill set that really gonna set them apart. And I think if they play focused football, they will be in the top for shutting down some of the top receivers.
Byron, are the Giants going to regret letting the Kobe Dean slip to the Eagles because they had all these injury concerns?
I think so. I just think you just can't put no more emphasis on the depth. I mean, you got to have depth in the National Football League because of the injury factors and the long 18-week schedule that we have. You have to have that depth.
And so, and I know you probably love answering this type of question. With all of the offseason moves that the Eagles have done and the way that this draft went, especially with the defensive side of the ball. I mean, obviously they pick up A.J. Brown in the midst of all that, which is really, I think, changes their mediocre receiving core to probably the top in the NFC East, and possibly in the top 3 of the, NFC in total. And the upgrades to the defense. Do you feel that the Eagles could start to make a real run? From what you saw from last year, and still some of the question marks that Hurts has.
Right.
Do you feel that they could be in that top tier of teams that could possibly, go to the Super Bowl and represent the NFC?
No doubt. I think the Eagles are in a position now to be the top 10 teams in the National Football League. It's like you said, it's the only question mark. It's the quarterback's decision making and how mature he can become. And I think the Eagles right now put themselves in a position to go deep into the playoff and maybe win the Super Bowl. No doubt they're going to be the top tier team in the NFC East. I feel that because if these guys can stay healthy and with the season and with the schedule that they have, I think they're in a position to be just like the Rams did last year.
Well, and that's quite because I feel like that the Rams did lose a little bit on their defense, and I firmly believe that Von Miller was a lot more integral in part of the defense, in the Rams winning the Super Bowl. I feel that they had been there, they hadn't won it. You need guys that know how to get over that hump and actually get the ring. And if you don't have that on your team, you're not, you're still unsure of yourself.
Absolutely.
I felt that Von Miller made that difference, and now he's not there anymore.
Right.
Now they all have a ring, so it's a little different, but I still think that that's a tough division.
And are they going to get comfortable just winning the ring? Are they going to still be very competitive on trying to continue to be the team that they can particularly be for its competition? And that's the key factor. But to me, I just think the Eagles are in a good position just based off the personnel that they had and the things they've done this offseason. And I also look at the OTAs and what's leading up into the month of July, how important these guys can get together, get the chemistry, get on the same page, and know each other really well in the film room. I think that's the key factor as well.
Now, speaking of receivers and speaking of the Rams, Odell Beckham Jr. had a bit of a resurgence, caught a touchdown pass in the Super Bowl, and got injured during the game. I don't know the status of his injury right now. No one's really talking about it, but he doesn't have a team right now. Some rumors are that maybe the Packers would be interested, but I mean, what happens to certain guys like the Packers? I mean, the Rams moved on from Robert Woods. They let him go to Tennessee, and him and Kupp were pretty much equals when they were with the Rams. And, in half a season changes everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing with the NFL now. You just can't keep guys together no more. You can't keep that same receiver core. And unfortunately, guys they're gonna have to make these moves for them and their families. But it's just the nature of the beast now. And I just think it's sad that it's like that. But I think too it's good for the players to make as much money as they can. And because this game is short, this is really 5 years, 6 years. When you get towards that, when you're in that 28 to 32 age range in the NFL, it's all fair games for them to make a decision on you.
But did the skills diminish that much? Take the case of Sammy Watkins. He's with the Packers.
28.
They
He's
picked
28.
him up. No one is talking about him as a weapon for Aaron Rodgers. They keep saying, we got to get Aaron Rodgers help. We got to get him help. They got him help. Sammy Watkins is a heck of a receiver.
But he had less than 1,000 yards last year too, though, right?
No, but I'm saying, has his skills diminished, Sammy Watkins, that much? Is he that? He's not that old.
No, he's 28.
Right. I mean, so I don't get it. That's a major acquisition to me.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's just I don't know what it is. When you change these players like this, it's a lot more goes into the chemistry. Is he going to be playing inside receiver, outside receiver? And then the route that they have to run, the depth of the routes and things like that. Can you create mismatches? Is he going to be? Is this guy still a player that they need to double? No, he's not a player that they need to double. And it's just that this game changed so many interchangeable pieces, and then these players might not fit into the style of offense that the Packers have. But Sammy Watkins, yeah, he definitely an impact player. But have he got 1,000 yards the last couple of years? No, he's around 800 to 900 yards a season, and that's an average. That's not whenever you get over 1,000 yards. Now you're making a player that's valuable to the team. So
I think partly because you have running quarterbacks in this day and age.
Yep.
And in some teams, their best running back is their quarterback. Like people ask me, who's the best running back in the NFL? I say Lamar Jackson. And that they don't count that, but that's what I say.
Right.
Yeah, and Lamar Jackson did win the MVP, but what's better to win the MVP or winning the Super Bowl? I think the Super Bowl is more valuable, and you have to put emphasis on winning the Super Bowl because that changed the whole dynamic of playing.
Now, winning MVP to these guys because it means the money, the contract. I hate to say it, they'll never admit it, but guys can win a Super Bowl and get cut, and guys, who win an MVP are going to be in big demand for big dollars. It's just the reality.
Yeah. Like Aaron Rodgers, he's finna make $50 million this year. So
there you go.
He's a top paid quarterback. Exactly.
Well, so let me segue into this then. I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate, or at least pick your brain as if you were OBJ. Mm-hmm. So now you're OBJ, Myron. And you have this injury, and of course, nobody's signing you right now. Is this one of these things where you decide that you want to wait maybe towards the end of the season and go the whole season as a free agent and go with a team that has the possibility of going to a Super Bowl rather than signing with the team right now and sitting on the bench that entire time? Is there a certain thought process specifically because you are OBJ and you've had all of these issues and problems that have happened in the past with different teams, and starting with the Giants, going to Cleveland, just bouncing around and doing these types of things, and let alone now it's like, okay, I'm not with the team, I have to rehab anyways. I could just sign with the team in week 15, week 16, where I'm able to maybe get back on the field, start practicing, and maybe help a team in the playoffs as somebody who's now this secret weapon that comes out of nowhere because they didn't have him before and now they have him. Is there a thought process that goes to that, or do you want to sign with the team right away because you want the money?
Yeah, I think it's a thought process. One of the thought process is too that he constantly in communication with his agent, and his agent is being contacted on a list of teams that they probably think about what he'd probably be best fitted into for us going to those particular teams. And I think right now he probably have 4 or 5 teams that they're closely looking at, and really it's not no hurry to sign. I mean, because he's not going to do anything right now but rehab and try to get his body back fitted to to play in the competition. So if I was him, I would just sit and continue to see what team would make would be in a position not only to I can make my top money, as well as going into the playoff and maybe possibly win another Super Bowl with that particular team. So, I'm pretty sure that's what he's looking at. But I'm thinking too, teams like a Green Bay and playing with Aaron Rodgers and seeing if that's something that's fit is probably at the top of his priority list. But right now, I wouldn't be in a hurry just because of the fact that look at what he did, what he's done everywhere he's gone. So I'm thinking if I was him, I just slowly rehab, make sure, and then look at the top teams that's contacting my agent and seeing what best fit. They're showing him at these basketball games, and so he constantly staying active and staying engaged. But I know he got a lot of other things that's hitting him up as well for his appearances and things like that. But I wouldn't be in a hurry. I just continue to work out and have about 4 or 5 teams that I'll be concerned about going and playing for.
Byron, but half the teams in the NFL easily would pick them up at their price.
Yeah.
It's a question of the price. And
right,
I think
right.
it comes down, Pax, also when a big name receiver goes down with an injury, which is bound to happen, and OBJ is out there, then he becomes very appealing. They need to grab someone and they need a quick fix, and he'll be the closest thing to a quick fix.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not bound to happen. It's going to happen. It's just like DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, he's out for 6 games.
Yeah.
It's based off of what happened to him with the Cardinals. So, and he's, when you bring a player in like OBJ, you got constant success, a path that you can come in and change the dynamic of the offense.
And I feel like a very black, or dark horse that could possibly get OBJ if he doesn't sign with anybody before the season begins. I think is Denver. I feel like Denver is one of the spots that they could really benefit by having him even on the field as a decoy.
Yeah.
It would make a big difference for them, because I just don't feel like, they've got Russell Wilson. I don't really believe in their receiving core as it's currently constructed. And that makes me believe that, that OBJ, obviously money's going to talk. And if somebody wants to pay him money to sit around and learn their playbook, then he's going to probably take that. But that all being said,
you make a great point when you mention Denver, because with all the talk about Deshaun Watson, what the NFL is going to do discipline-wise, no one's talking about the potential with Jerry Jeudy. Had something in the news. I hope it's not true. It might be totally untrue.
Yeah.
But there's some off-the-field activity that the NFL is going to look into, very carefully, as far as domestic abuse or something along those lines. And we hope it's not true. No one's saying it is. But the NFL, without a doubt, is going to look carefully into it. And you never know if he had to miss some games. If they came to that conclusion, they'd certainly want an OBJ, as someone of that caliber to fill in.
Exactly right. And that's one of the things I was thinking too. Denver might be a good fit for him, because Russell Wilson and plus he can go over there and make an immediate impact for a good team that's positioned to win a lot of games this year.
Right. And that's kind of how I feel, that AFC West is so stacked,
right,
in terms of, and it's going to be a dogfight to get in. I think that they're going to wind up having 3 teams in the playoffs. And to do it that way, that's going to be, when you don't want to be that 4th team. You don't want to have to play for a tie, to get into the playoffs.
Chargers and Chiefs, you're giving them all a playoff position.
I was going to say this. Another good thing about Denver, it's hard to beat them at home. For years, it's just hard to beat them because of the atmosphere and the elevation of everything over there. It's just hard for teams to come in and beat them.
The Eagles did it last year pretty handily. So,
but they didn't have Russell Wilson. They
did not have Russell Wilson.
I'm going to tell you, I might be in the minority here. I think Russell Wilson is a good quarterback. Now, he belongs in the Hall of Fame when his career ends. Don't get me wrong. He's had a Hall of Fame worthy career. I don't quite put him in the elite category. When I say elite, I'm talking about Mahomes, Rodgers, even Joe Burrow. And I just don't put him there. I put him maybe a little ahead of Derek Carr right now. And that's about as far as I go. And I'm talking about right now.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to see how he can make the adjustment with the flight of the ball over there in the atmosphere. It's going to be something that I want to see if he'll be able to manage and control the philosophy of the ball and how it come down to the receivers because he do have a good sparrow and flight of the ball, and I'm just wanting to see how it gonna change the dynamic of his game for him, because playing in Denver, John Elway had it mastered, Peyton Manning had it mastered, and I want to see if he can master, throwing in that stadium.
So that's interesting, because you never really think about some of the specifics or of, hey, he's got to take a touch off of the ball a little bit because it is going to sail on him or go a little bit faster.
Right.
I mean, you're saying that, obviously Peyton Manning and John Elway was there forever, but Peyton Manning was not, and he was able to kind of make that happen after a couple of seasons. How much time do you think is really necessary for, I mean, this is a professional quarterback who has played in the league, has played in Denver, so it's not like he's never played there before,
right.
But to be able to, accustom their game to hit some of the idiosyncrasies of just the location itself.
I think he by him being professional, I think probably within a month time, OTAs, I think he have it down. And he's the kind of guy that always work out in the off season and get receivers to come in and they get familiar with their style of play and their route running and things like that. I just think if that's what's happening, I think he's gonna definitely have an advantage.
You talk about mentorship, because Ryan Tannehill came under criticism by saying he didn't feel he had to mentor Malik Willis. I think it was taken out of context, but that's another issue. But all the Denver quarterbacks in recent years, they had John Elway there to mentor them. And it hasn't quite worked out. I mean, what's the deal over there? How come no one talks about it? Do you think the great John Elway taking these guys under his wing, they would have been better than they actually were?
Yeah, and I don't know if John is really want to mentor guys for running the operation of Denver.
He's running the team. You'd think he'd want to do that.
He ain't got time to mentor the quarterbacks. I think the quarterback needs to take it on themselves to go out there and learn. Maybe he'll talk to them about certain things in case scenarios of how his game plan fitted into the equation, but he got so many things on his plate. I don't think he wants to.
Come on, you mean John Elway can't hit the field with these guys and work with them for a while? You don't think you'd think he'd want to do that?
I don't know, man. I don't know if that's something that he's doing for his operational side that he's supposed to focus on.
Okay, Byron, when you were a receiver and you were with any team you were with, if Jerry Rice was an executive up there in the office and he was there and he just didn't work with you, didn't hit the field, wouldn't you want the great Jerry Rice to come down and constantly work with you to help you improve on your game?
I would definitely want his insights and some of the things that he can tell me and equip me to prepare for, but I don't think he's going to have time to actually mentor me. That's what I'm saying.
So let me ask this question then. So, ultimately, I hear what you're saying, Jack, but the truth of the matter is that it was 20 years ago when John Elway played. John Elway does not have the arm. I mean, he has the knowledge and things like that, but it was a different NFL then.
Right.
How much do you think that quarterbacks today are going to listen to a mentor from 20 years ago and say, okay, well, this is what we did back then, and it still kind of work today? And you're like, yeah, Pops, I'm all right. I got this. You know what I mean? How much of that do you think would happen? I feel like that it would be more of an ego situation where it's like, yeah, old man, I got this. I ain't worried about what you got to say.
Yeah, and Elway, not to take nothing from Elway, me and Elway was in the same draft class of 83, so we both 60, 61 years old. So, like when I do these football camps, I bring in the young players because the kids want to listen to the young players. They don't want to listen to me, even though I got the insights and I run the camp. I step back, but what I've tried to get the kids to understand that it's so much things that you can take in and learn, and techniques and the right foot, your cuts, your angles. I just got to talk to the guy the other day. He said, we was talking about trying to catch a football. I said, what you don't do, you don't catch a football, you catch the point of the football. If you keep in your mind and say, you say point, just what your mind gonna program you to locate the point of the football. So you're actually catching the point. And so when you break it down, and I said one of the things when I had my first daughter, my name to football Brandy. So whenever somebody throwing me the football, I'm catching Brandy. And so those are some of the things I think an older guy can come in and inform guys of the little things that they can break down and get focused on versus, they don't hardly run the passing tree no more. There are passing trees that we learned, but now these guys are running at certain depths, certain routes, and it have to be a timetable on from the quarterback to the receiver on releasing and catching the football. It's a whole different concept.
Good point.
Yeah,
Pags.
it's all like a clock in your head rather than.
Yeah.
The big O Oscar Robertson, I think it was he who said it, not long ago. The modern NBA players don't even know who they are. They walk by guys like him and Bill Russell, like no idea who they are, like they don't even exist. They're from another, they're like dinosaurs to the modern guys.
Yeah, and that's part of it. Unfortunately, it really is valuable if these guys knew who they were, and picked their brains and talk about some things. Because I'm watching Magic Johnson, and a lot of people don't know about Magic. Somebody they know about is
I don't know
Jordan.
about that. I think Magic Johnson, the modern guys relate to him.
But they don't know that Magic Johnson and Larry Bird changed the game. They changed the game. Before them was Dr. Julius Erving, Dr. J, and now, these guys don't quite understand who these guys are.
Well, they do Dr. J because they see the highlights. They love the dunks. The dunks don't go out of style. So you see a Dr. J old clip on the dunk, and they love it.
But the history of the game is so important, I think, but it's different. It's different things that really change the dynamics. And some of these young kids don't understand. But yeah.
Hey, listen, without that even thought process, you wouldn't have the conversation who's the best ever, Michael Jordan or LeBron James.
Well, even Philly fans are guilty. Chuck Bednarik. How many people talk about him in Philly? Is he still a legend in Philadelphia?
Absolutely. But Chuck Bednarik was also the last of a completely dying breed where he played both sides of the ball. He was out there for 57 minutes to 60 minutes of play in the NFL, and that he was the last one to really do that. I mean, strike, like when you have Deion Sanders, who started to play offense and defense, and then you had that one Patriot who started to play cornerback because they were so hurting at cornerback and was playing both sides of the ball. I mean, that on occasion it does happen, but for the most part, Chuck Bednarik, I mean, he was in the trenches the entire game. So yes, that is iconic. When you think about it, in this day and age, nobody's doing that now. There's not anybody who's able to make that happen because the game is so much more. I think Chuck Bednarik would be able to play in this game, but he would only be able to play defense. He wouldn't have been able to play offense. Yeah, I think he'd have still been a great middle linebacker just because of his mentality and his toughness and his grit. But to be able to do both sides would have been impossible. And as he got older, his body felt it. It's like he was tough getting just to be able to get up and in and out of a car. So,
but yeah, hey, and another thing too, Jack. I played both sides of the ball in high school. I didn't even leave the football field. Could you imagine that?
You look out. If I was your coach, your career would have turned out differently, Byron. I would have made you a cornerback and kept you there. You would have been a good cornerback. You would have had a good career as a corner.
And there goes, and see, he would have been an NFL coach and not been a boxing writer, and we would not have all of the great stuff and the great stories that Jack has. Probably because he probably would have not.
So you're telling me Byron couldn't have played the corner? That's what.
I believe absolutely he could have played the corner.
He would have been a darn good cornerback.
I was all-state safety. I don't know if you knew that.
I would like you a corner. I would have liked you on corner on one-to-one coverage.
So you like to lay the hit every once in a while. I dig that.
That's a mistake. That's why. If you made a little mistake, you could recover quickly.
But you know what? I get a lot of insights from Jack because he trying to make my grandsons long snappers, deep snappers.
That's why
you know what? John Dorenbos. That's what he did. Magic and snapped the ball long, and he made a 14-year career out of that.
There you
so
go.
I mean, there's that and being a kicker. Morton Anderson never He worked till he was like 74.
You kind of wonder, kids, they like the glamour positions. Offensive linemen, they have no choice but to play offensive line and defensive linemen because they're big. They're not going to be receivers and cornerbacks. But you kind of wonder, kids who are lighter, who could maybe put on a little weight, they like glamour positions, either receiver, cornerback, or running back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you got to know that, hey, just being on the team is important, and making and getting paid is the second thing important. So yeah, absolutely.
I know, but people come out to see you play, family, whatever. Let's say you're blocking all game. That's not the most entertaining thing, to see. But if you're a receiver, they like to see you cut, make a move, maybe catch a touchdown pass. Your cornerback, prevents something. Even, a safety, a linebacker, they get in the flow a little bit. But just, if you're defensive lineman, you could get a sack. But if you're just blocking, your long snapper, it doesn't do it. Even a kicker gets, some of the glory you enjoy watching.
And that's kind of what my family is experiencing now. We got my great nephew is a 6'6", 330 at Texas Tech, and he's a big boy, and he's in they're in the off season, and man, it's fun just watching him. He's a left tackle, right tackle.
There you go.
And so it's fun watching him because they used to see me being a receiver. Now they got to see this lineman. So that's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's not the same.
Well, I tell you what, Byron, it's great to have you. I'm glad that I get to talk to you like this. Unfortunately, I'm in here for Mac today, but I appreciate getting to actually talk a little bit of football with you because I often get to do so. So I appreciate you coming on the show today. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next Friday. Or you stop in on Sunday with Mac and Jack. I don't even know.
They don't want me on. They got Jim Jeffco on there, so they don't. Want me
on there. During the season. We'll talk other stuff besides football with Jim.
I know.
I see. You have to expand your repertoire. You got to start figuring out more about the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, Dallas Mavericks and boxing and all that good stuff. Yeah, exactly right.
We could use some hockey on the. If you could give us a Dallas Star report.
Yeah, Dallas Stars. They did good this year. I'm proud of them.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. They went through a tough 7-game series. So, but anyways, we appreciate Byron Williams again. Thank you for coming on the show, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, guys. Have a great weekend.
You too.
All right.
All right. So coming up here, we have Keith. He's in the backstage already. So we'll come right back after this commercial. And of course, I've got some of the old commercials. So I went really old with some of these. So we'll be back here momentarily.
There are times when only an ice-cold beer will do. And there are times, like this one, when it's got to be Schaefer. Schaefer, like any fine beer, tastes wonderful in that first cold glass. But, and this is what really sets Schaefer apart, the pleasure of this beer doesn't fade after one glass or two. Even after your thirst is gone, the pleasure of ice-cold Schaefer keeps coming on. Your last one is every bit as rewarding as your first. That's why
Schaefer is the one beer to have when you're having more than one.
My baloney has a first name. It's O-S-C-A-R. My baloney has a second name. It's M-A-Y-E-R. Oh, I love to eat it every day. And if you ask me why, I'll say, 'cause Oscar Mayer has a way with B-O-L-O-G-N-A.
Oscar Mayer, the first name in Bologna.
How's that?
Anyone else?
My name is David, and in 8 years, I'll be an alcoholic.
Hi, David.
I'll start drinking in middle school, just at parties. But my parents won't start talking to me about it till high school. And by then, I'll already be in some trouble.
Kids who drink before age 15 are 5 times more likely to have alcohol problems when they're adults.
The thing is, my parents won't even see it coming.
So start talking.
Who's next?
Before they start drinking.
The Hometown Foundation is excited to bring back the Dream Ride Experience, August 26th to the 28th at Connecticut's Farmington Polo Club. Join us in celebrating the accomplishments of our Dream Riders while enjoying live music, a car and motorcycle show, family fun zone, pet adoptions, canine demonstrations, the Fireman's Chili Cook-Off, and much, much more. Get your tickets today.
You can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboys fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, from Brooklyn. Hey, guess any.
And welcome back. We're here again. And like I said, as backstage from TGI Sports, the guy who usually comes on Fridays right before I do.
Oh,
Keith Engel.
Good morning, guys. Listen, I saw that Schaefer commercial. Had to run down and get myself an ice cold Schaefer. I felt like I was with my dad in 1968. Thank you for that.
Hey, you know what? And the fact that they had to open that with a can opener. Yeah, that was the one thing that I saw in that commercial. I'm like, wow, they actually had to open up both sides like that with a can opener.
So there's usually coffee in my cup. I think there's a little Schaefer mixed in there now.
Hey,
that was the official beer of the New York Mets.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, it wasn't Rheingold too.
I thought Rheingold was the Yankees. Valentine
beer was the Yankees.
Yeah.
I remember Mel Allen used to do the Valentine.
You're just a little older than me, Jack. So.
See, and I was, we had Schmitz here. So Schmitz was the name.
Yeah.
Was the old beer of choice back then.
Yep, I remember Schmitz too. Man, I'm old.
Yeah, well, you guys are definitely older than me, so I'm the young one of the group.
Colorado Rocky Coors Field, is that Coors?
It is
with the beer.
Well, they're huge. They built the ballpark for them. I think is where they got the naming rights. I should say. Yeah, they pay for the naming rights.
So Keith, I mean, obviously I don't follow much about the Patriots, so we don't really care about them. But yeah, I know that every time I always hear you talking about the Yankees. So I took a look at the Yankees and how they did yesterday. And of course they lost, to Baltimore. However, they did win this series, which I found is a little different than they normally do against Baltimore. So for some reason or another, Baltimore has their number, but
yeah, recently in the formula for winning the American League East is winning about, going 16-2 or 17-1 against Baltimore and then holding your own against everybody else. And the Yankees haven't done that the last couple of years. This year now, that's 2 series in a row. They lost the first series of the year. But they're always pesky for the Yankees. I don't know why. You're right.
So, but I can understand that because the Marlins always seem to have the Phillies number, and I never can figure out why. It's like the Phillies can win 3 out of 4 games against the Dodgers and the bats go crazy. And then of course they come back after beating also San Diego 2 out of 3 games in San Diego. Then they come back here and they muster a whole 3 runs in 3 games, and their starting pitching and even their bullpen is doing pretty well because obviously they let up only 5 runs this entire series and they lost 2 out of those 3 games because the bats are just so cold.
And that's what they need. They need to score runs to win, right? That team. So every team needs to score some runs. We know that. But that team needs to score runs more than others. They can't waste good pitching performances when that's not your strong suit.
So, but I know that you're not the biggest Aaron Boone fan, and yet he seems to have the Yankees in first place and really in the AL East specifically. And I think that they're really up in the top with the AL in total, aren't they not? I think that they have.
They are leading the American League in victories, maybe baseball, but let me look quick. It could be leading all of baseball in victories. Listen, he's done a better job this year, obviously. And My problems with Aaron Boone are multifaceted. So I have a problem the way he doesn't hold guys accountable. I've watched some horrible base running, horrible defense in the past. And a lot of those faults have gotten better. They've hit better in the clutch. They've run the bases. They played much better defense. That's been one of the keys of their turnaround. And in past seasons, I haven't seen him hold guys accountable when they did not play well, didn't play good. They made mental mistakes, which those aren't excusable. Physical errors are going to happen. Mental errors can't. And my other big problem with Aaron Boone was the way he kept his job this year. And he's never going to get my respect back when he lets management throw his coaches, including his best friend in all of baseball, under the bus and fire them to keep his job. And you want to reverse this, when Buck Showalter was fired by the Yankees in 1995, going into the 96 season, it was because he would not make changes in his coaching staff. They offered him to come back if he fired these 2 or 3 guys, and he said, no, they're my guys. They stay. I stay if they stay, and they fired Buck. That's the difference. I lose respect for guys, and I don't know how they got a decent coaching staff, don't get me wrong, but at some point, that hurts you in the business when coaches are going to wonder if you got their back or you're going to throw them under the bus to keep your own job.
Okay, let me throw this idea at you, Keith, okay? He's close with them on a personal level, but let's say Buck Showalter analyzed the situation and he's thinking to himself, as fond as I am of these guys and as much as I wanted them, they could have done a little better. I can understand the change of scenery that the front office wants to make.
Right.
Because, I mean, I've been at a lower level where I coached in high school. I had an assistant coach I was very fond of. In his performance, I saw it slipped at a certain point. Obviously, it's not the same. You don't have upper management telling you have to make a move.
That's different.
But if they did, I would understand it a little. Maybe that's the case. Maybe the coaches came to the realization, we understand the team underachieved a little bit. They have to make a move. And should he have necessarily have stepped down?
I'm okay if he fired his own coaches, right? If he made the decision to say, Phil Nevin needs to go, I need a better third base coach. I need a different bench coach. I need a different pitching coach. But that wasn't the case. Management came to him and said, we're making these changes. And I don't think it's a good situation in any sport for the manager, the coach, whoever we're talking about in whatever sport it is, not to have his people on those coaching staffs. It's never a good situation. You set up situations like the Mets had years ago where Willie Randolph is getting stabbed in the back by Jerry Manuel every day. And Jerry Manuel gets his job when he gets fired. You can't have those situations, and you set up those types of situations if coaches and managers don't have their own people in place.
Yeah, but do you think maybe he was on board with what management was doing rather than fighting? He's like, hey, listen, I mean, do you feel that, and it sounds like to me that this is how you feel, that you felt specifically, I'm trying to save my job no matter what, and you guys can do whatever it is you want to do. Maybe he was on board, and that was part of the negotiation. Like, hey, this is my best friend. I feel like this needs to come from you guys rather than from myself.
It's, like so much with Aaron Boone, I think, he got on board with it after the fact. But that's not the same thing as being proactive and saying, I need to make these changes. He should, and there's nowhere I've seen this portrayed where he went to management and said, we need to make these changes next year. None of these conversations came up until Aaron Boone's job was in question of whether he was going to be back for another year.
Yeah, but wouldn't you think that they would keep that under wraps? I mean, obviously, you don't want to hear that the coach didn't have faith in his coaching staff. You want to try to keep that still all above board.
I'd much rather hear that Aaron Boone or any manager didn't have faith in his third base coach or his pitching coach, and he decided to make the change, and management didn't make him make the change. Because again, managers should have autonomy when it comes to their coaching staffs, in my mind, again. And I don't think Aaron Boone has it now. I think he had it when he got the job. I don't think he has it now.
Keith, they don't even have autonomy these days to make up their own starting lineup.
Well, that's a great point. That's a great point. Again, and with the Yankees more than anywhere, there's no way not to feel like that lineup's not coming down from Brian Cashman and whoever else he's got.
Joe Girardi makes up his own lineup. He still has that power, even though there's some discontent. No one's going to tell Joe Girardi who to play. They're going to talk to him about it. But he'll eventually get fired for that reason unless the Phillies turn it around. But for the most part, managers, I hate to use the word puppets, but they are puppets for the GMs. The GMs are given the power to run the organization, and they tell the manager exactly how he has to do things.
Too many of them, but I don't think that's the case across town with Buck. I don't think Buck.
No, not at all with Buck. No, Buck does his own thing. Buck has the power. He has the power to do what he wants. Aaron Boone doesn't quite have it. Brian Cashman likes Aaron Boone a lot because he respects him a lot. And Aaron Boone will do what Brian Cashman wants. And, and Brian Cashman will listen to Aaron Boone's viewpoint and consider it if Aaron Boone feels strongly about it. But Aaron Boone's always going to defer to Brian Cashman.
Yeah, no, it's good for Cashman because he's got a place to deflect all the blame because Brian Cashman's been here forever and he's been to one World Series since 2003. Let's not forget that. This is the New York Yankees, not the Kansas City Royals.
Let's give the Yankees a break. They have the best record in baseball right now.
I know. Again, I said this last week. And I said in the blog last week.
I know Pax wants. We're going to talk about the Phillies in a little bit, but I'm going to just say with the Yankees, the wheels might start falling off because I'm going to tell you, they have 3 positions where they have absolutely no hitting at catcher and 2 outfield spots. Aaron Hicks and Joey Gallo aren't going to suddenly start hitting, and they're not going to get hitting from the catching position. That's going to catch up to them at some point. If anything should happen to Judge, Stanton, Rizzo, Donaldson, Kuloff, he might cool off. I can just see the wheels coming off gently.
They can carry 2 of those guys, not 3, though. I mean, Gallo and Hicks have got to hit, right? Or 4 guys.
They're not going to hit. Realistically, they're not going to turn it around big time.
No, I can live with Kiner Falefa and the catcher's not, knocking the ball out of the ballpark every day if they play good defense, which they are. But I need all the rest of the positions to be clicking, and I can't have Aaron Hicks hitting 200 and Joey Gallo being a human. He's played better recently. But him being a human wind machine up there, I mean, we
have one of those on the Phillies.
I'm sorry, what's that?
We have one of those on the Phillies.
Which
Schwarber?
Oh yeah, Schwarber.
Well, Schwarber's not as bad. Schwarber produces somewhat.
He had a great. By the way, since you brought up Schwarber, I got to say he had a great meltdown against Angel Hernandez. Was that last week? It was awesome.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago at this point, where it's like you miss him up here, you miss him down here, you miss him left, you miss him right. I mean, that really was. But you know what? Since then, he's not performed really well at all. And I mean, even as well as they were hitting in Dodgers Stadium, he went like 0 for that series, or like had 1 hit in that series. It was so bad. And I saw that coming. I mean, he's a career 230 hitter who had a good season last year. I didn't think he was worth the money that he was. I know he hit some home runs. He had 32 home runs, but he averages somewhere around 20 to 25 home runs a year. So, I mean, he cashed in on last year, and I'm no fault of his own. I mean, hey, make the money if you can make the money. But I thought that the Phillies really overpaid him, and I wasn't real excited about that signing. And now he's even below the Mendoza line.
Pax, did Girardi want him? Was he a Girardi guy?
I don't know that answer. I mean, there wasn't, when you looked at the free agent names that could make a splash during signing, he was the one top on that list, and I didn't see it. Like, I'm like, how is it you can't look back 2 years ago that you saw how bad he was, and now you got to keep him in the field where he's not a left fielder. He's really a DH. He should be at least a DH. And, like when you see like that one error he had the other day where the ball just went under his glove, you can't do that as an outfielder, as a professional outfielder. And it's frustrating to see those types of plays, especially when you're not producing at bat.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of the guy, but for some reason the analytics guys love this guy. That's who loves him, is the guys who are really, that's almost everybody, who lean so heavily on analytics today. I mean, they look at his on-base percentage, and because, again, it's the 3 outcome syndrome in baseball, right? He walks, he strikes out, or he hits a home run.
Yeah, the problem is that he's striking out a hell of a lot more than he is hitting home runs. And it's, and I look at him So I look at him as like a very, very poor man's Kruk. I feel like Kruk was a much better hitter, much more situational hitter, had power when he wanted to use it, but never really used it, and just was just strong in what he was strong in.
Yeah.
And I look at Schwarber as always swinging for the fences, doesn't know how to go opposite field when he really should start trying to figure that out, because they really are shifting everybody to the, to the right side of the field. And it's like, at what point do you realize, all right, when you're hitting 180 and you're striking out a tremendous amount and you're not connecting, I remember when Pete Rose was talking to like the Big Hurt and A-Rod about batting. And he's like, listen, the swing is what got you to Major League Baseball. So maybe move up in the box, move back in the box, move a little left, move a little right, so that you change the way you're looking at the ball a little bit. Don't change your swing. And I got to feel that that's a little bit of what's got to happen here, that he's got to start to play a little bit with where he's standing, not necessarily the stance, but just where he's standing and how he's approaching this ball, to maybe change some of the outcomes. To just keep going up there and to keep whiffing and to keep whiffing and to keep whiffing has got to be frustrating. And then it starts to affect you in the field.
Yeah. I was glad to hear you bring up John Kruk, because there's a guy that I think is like an underrated ball player. You look at his numbers and there's nothing to really get excited about, but he was a clutch player, as you mentioned, Pegs, and knew how to play, hit in different situations, and he had a personality, something baseball lacks terribly today in a lot of cases. He had a wonderful personality, and the game misses guys like that in my mind.
And he was close to a 300 hitter. So
yeah.
You mentioned something, Keith, before, which I take a little bit exception to, with the walks. Okay, let's say a batter gets up 4 times. He goes 0 for 2, but gets 2 walks with the bases empty. That's a productive day, but his batting average goes down because he's
depends on the situation.
It also depends how he gets the walks. If he battles the pitcher and earns the walk, okay. If the pitcher's control is awful, and he gets first base obviously by default. Like yesterday, Aaron Hicks actually battled to a couple of full counts, fouling pitches off, but then when he'd strike out, it would be ball 4, and he'd swing at a low pitch, and that was frustrating.
Look, it depends on when you get the walks too, because again, I'll refer to Joey Gallo a couple of weeks ago in a game the Yankees were playing against, I want to say Toronto, I'm not sure. In the 9th inning, it's 2-1. They got 2 men on base, 2 men out, and they got, I think, Falafa in the catcher's spot coming up behind him, and he's got to drive in the run. He walked. Okay, so in the scorebook, that's a great at bat. He walked. That's a good, successful in today's game. That's a very successful outcome. Except I need a guy to drive in the run because the 2 guys behind
him. But he passed the baton. If it's Aaron Judge, you don't want him to pass the baton. You don't want to walk. But with Joey Gallo, it's not bad. The next guy, it's next man up.
2 of the pitches were pitches they were balls, but they were hittable balls. They were just off the black, and he got a walk, but he should be swinging and driving in the run. And when he did swing at that bat, of course, he was swinging for the fences, not for a base hit to tie the game.
Well, let me throw this to Pax, for example. He's complaining about Schwarber. We're talking about Gallo. Let's take these 3 dimensions. Gallo sets amongst the major league record holders of all time for striking out in a season, but he's amongst the league leaders in getting walks, and he hits 35 to 40 homers, and he plays an excellent defensive outfield. Isn't that the type of guy you maybe want, even with his 176 batting average? He's great defensively, hits 35 to 40 homers, and is amongst the league leaders in walks. When you look at the whole package, it's maybe a little better than we make it out to be, but we look at that horrendous batting average and the strikeouts.
Yeah, but it's, again, Jack, it's the time of the games when he's doing whatever he's doing. You got to dive deeper into those 45 home runs. How many did he hit when they were up 6-0? That we aren't taking that into account. And again, I go back and I look at bats where I need him to drive in a run, and he's not doing it. He's taking a walk, or he's swinging for the fences. And that is, again, it's an epidemic in baseball. The way it's played today.
It sounds like, Keith, you've become an analytics guy. You want to look at analytics with Joey Gallo stuff.
No, not necessarily. Again, the numbers are important. I don't disagree, but when you get the numbers are important as well. If I was just an analytics guy, analytics guys love Joey Gallo. Brian Cashman loves Joey Gallo. That's why he's here.
And it's the same way with Schwarber. But I tell you, Carlos, I got to disagree with you here. The bullpen lost that one Mets game 8-7. Short of that, though, they have been doing their job. I mean, literally, when you lose games 3-0 and 2-0, don't tell me it's a bullpen that's causing the issue, because when you're getting quality starts from your starters and then you're having your bullpen not give up any runs, and you have the best hitting team in Major League Baseball, at least as it was 2 days ago. I mean, it may have changed because they got shut out 2 games out of 3. That's the problem. That's the issue. And Schwarber is same thing as you guys are talking about with Gallo. He gets on base because he gets all those walks. Truth of the matter is that they are not trying to walk him. They are actually trying to strike him out now, and he's been obliging. He's been getting struck out too often of times. And literally, when you have Castellanos behind him is not doing his job. JT Realmuto is having a lower, not his typical season. So there has been a couple of things that have happened. I feel that all of the bats for the Phillies will start to wake up here a little bit as we move into. I told you I needed them to be at 500 by July 4th, and after that, I feel that that's when they're going to make their run. I still stick to that. It's that the hitting weather is going to help them a little bit, but I need Schwarber to play a little bit better. I need him to get on base more than what he is, and he's not. He's just continually striking out over and over again, and that's very frustrating. When you're batting
they can't use him as a DH going forward the next 6 weeks.
Not with Harper.
Bryce Harper.
Harper can't
throw for 6 weeks. I don't get it. He can't throw, but he can bat. How's that going to affect his batting?
So ultimately, the throw motion would continue to, it's the UV joint or something like that. And the throwing motion is what would cause more damage. And if he was to get surgery, he'd be out for the rest of the season, wouldn't be able to bat or nothing. So that's why they're resting the arm and saying, okay, you're not going to throw the ball for 6 to 8 weeks. Kind of like, I guess the crosstown rivals of the Yankees that you guys like to never talk about, the Mets, who are also having a pretty good season, just had a big hit to their team, where Scherzer is not going to be able to throw for 6 to 8 weeks because of an oblique strain. And now they're both of their DeGrom and Scherzer, the 2 guys that they were depending on to be able to carry them through this season, are both out.
They'll be back, but they'll be back.
Well, you got to stay afloat for 6 weeks.
July, by the middle of July or thereabouts.
That's a long ways and a lot of games.
It's a long ways, but if they hold on and both guys come back and they could stay the course the rest of the year, the Mets are going to be tough to beat.
How much does Russ then fall into play? I mean, because DeGrom's not going to be ready to play. Scherzer's not going to have been able to throw for 8 weeks. Is he going to have the same type of stuff? Now you're getting closer and closer to go time for the playoffs. And the Mets, as usual, I feel like are going to Mets it up.
Well, again, that's why I said I think the most important move in the offseason was hiring a Buck Showalter by the Mets. And we're going to find out now because Buck's going to earn his money these next 6 weeks because he's got to keep them in contention for them to have any effect when they come back. So
you guys are talking about like Buck Showalter's like Vince Lombardi is someone he's going to have that type of impact.
I'm just comparing him with other managers.
He's been around forever. He's managed forever. He's been a good, solid manager, but he has, you put down, listen, Keith, you put down the Yankees and Brian Cashman. They haven't won a World Series since 2009. Well, Buck Showalter's never won a World Series. But you talk glowingly of Showalter and you go after Brian Cashman.
Look at the teams he put
together. Goes after Joe Girardi, who won it in 2009 with the
Let
Yankees.
me tell you, Buck's whole resume would look a whole lot different if he didn't leave the Yankees in 1996 because him and Michael built that dynasty, not George Steinbrenner, not Brian Cashman. Buck Showalter and Gene Michael built that dynasty, and he didn't get a chance to capitalize on it.
You got to give Steinbrenner credit in the equation. He was involved in.
He was suspended when they built that team. He wasn't even there. That's why they were able to rebound.
No. George Steinbrenner listened. Okay, case in point. He listened to Gene Michael when Steinbrenner wanted to trade Mariano Rivera. Michael told him don't, and Steinbrenner listened.
I love the revisionist history of George Steinbrenner since he passed away. God bless his soul. I love George, but the revisionist history of what George did in his time with the Yankees is amazing. He rebuilt them in the 70s, yes, but then he ruined them for almost 2 decades. So
hold on. Was how many times did he hire Billy Martin?
5 times.
I think it was like a 6th time Billy Martin was getting ready before he tragically had the accident.
He was going to get a 6th opportunity, most likely, is what it looked like. Yes.
So, and I know that he was always buying championships, is what I felt. I feel like Steinbrenner was really big at buying championships. And the only person I can think of that bought a championship better was Izenga down in Florida. When
I don't like that term, guys. You know, I hate it. Look at the Dodgers. I mean, them signing Mookie Betts the way they did. What is that any different than the Yankees getting Reggie Jackson? Even though Betts came over supposedly in a trade as opposed to being a free agent, the whole idea is, you know, you put the money out.
This is my point. This is my point about the team getting rebuilt when George was gone. Who was the core of those championship teams? Andy Pettit, Derek Jeter, Bernie Williams.
What is the difference?
All homegrown guys.
What's the difference between Steve Cohen and George Steinbrenner? Steve Cohen is perceived as less of a meddler. He's liked a little more, but they do business the same way.
You didn't ask me to compare him, though. I didn't say he was better than George Steinbrenner.
Steve Cohen is paying the big money. He's buying guys, basically. Nothing wrong with that. He gave Lindor that ridiculous contract. Scherzer, he's paid him off the charts for 3 years, $130 million for 3 years.
Look, at the game's changed as far as that goes. Even when free agency was still in its infancy, when George was going after all these guys in the 70s and then into the 80s, the game's so much different now from that, even from a business standpoint, than it was then. Everybody's moving around now. Nobody stays. Derek Jeter comes up today or Jorge Posada. They're not going to stay with one team. You're not going to see guys play 20 years with a team anymore. It's just not going to happen.
If they're willing to take a little less money, they could. In the case of Freddie Freeman, he could have worked it out with Atlanta, maybe taken one less year in the contract. And then when the contract was up, if he was still effective, Atlanta wasn't, they would keep him at their price at least.
He was the heart of that team. Look where they are right now. I know they were there last year and they can come back, but Freddie Freeman was part of that equation last year. Great leader, more than numbers. Freddie Freeman is more than numbers guy. Aaron Judge is more than a numbers guy. And teams discount this. They look at numbers and whatever.
Yeah, well, that's why I agree with the Aaron Judge situation, guys. I feel the Yankees didn't put their best foot forward to sign him before the year. They go public with the offer. Even though it's a fair offer, Aaron Judge could do better on the open market at the end of the year. And the Yankees should have addressed that and came out with their very best offer. And now they're going to increase their offer later on. And they're going to give him an offer that chances are he would have signed for. But now he's going to wait. He might even get a better one elsewhere. It takes just one team to blow it away. I mean, for all we know, it's going to be the Phillies. I mean, they're going to go free agent again and come up with something massively big.
Releasing that what he turned down was obviously a ploy to get the fans on their side against Aaron Boone, as management has done for years, and it didn't work. I'm not Aaron. I said Aaron Boone, Aaron Judge. It backfired on him, and it's certainly all you need to know about what Aaron Judge is worth more to the Yankees than he is any other franchise in my mind, because of the marketing, because of everything else. Look at that situation in Toronto with that kid and the Toronto fan, and that is worth so much money to a team that's worth $7 billion. You give him what he needs. I don't care. He's worth it because it's more than what he produces on the field that he brings to that team and that organization.
Well, let's see. And that's why we come here for our Yankee talk. I can't stand the Yankees. And, I'm not a big fan whatsoever.
You're Yankees light. Are you kidding me with Girardi, Didi Gregorius? I mean, come on.
Yeah, and I don't know how much longer Girardi's going to say because he's New York and he's not Philly, and that's part of the problem. If he was more Philly, I think that he would be more loved, and he's not, and that's why we talk about the fact that he's on the hot seat all the time. Plus, he's just so lackluster when he has those after game press conferences that he has where he's just sitting back in the chair and he's all slouched and he's just like so miserable to want to even talk to the media.
He's been that way his entire career.
Yeah, I hear you.
Girardi's happy to be in Philly at this point. What's your thoughts, Pags?
He doesn't look happy, does he, Pags?
No, he doesn't. And I think that the problem is that you can get kind of lost in New York with sports media because all the other sports teams that are around can take precedence when you're not doing so well. In Philadelphia, that's not the case. There's nothing else happening in the summertime. So if the Phillies aren't doing well, you are in the middle of that and you're stuck in the middle of that. And that's part of the job here in Philly. When you win a championship, they build you a statue. When you don't win a championship, they let you know the reasons why. And we're smart enough to know why some of these reasons are. And that's when he starts to get offensive. Same thing with Doc Rivers. Doc gets offended by the fact that somebody actually knows what they're talking about a little bit. And he gets frustrated and they don't want to talk to the media because they can't hide anywhere. In Philly, there is no hiding place. In New York, there is hiding. So that's why I feel like that's the biggest difference between sports in New York and sports in Philly.
Didn't Nick Foles get a statue?
Nick Foles has a statue. So does Bobby Clark. So does Durant. Anybody.
Does Mike Schmidt have a trophy or a statue?
You know what? I'd be willing to bet that there is someone. There's one.
I would hope so. Jeez.
Yeah, I think there's one out there. Because, like it says, you win championships, you get statues. That's how that works.
But every guy you mentioned after Nick Foles was certainly a greater player in his sport than Nick Foles overall.
Right, and I want to say,
maybe that one play because it was a charismatic play. That's what it is.
I know Harry Callis has a statue in the ballpark. So
he's got to have a statue.
We talked Chuck Bednarik. Now, Pax mentions Mike Schmidt. If Philadelphia, who is the greatest? Well, you talk pound for pound, sport for sport, the greatest Philly player of all time in the four major sports, if we combine them. Is it Mike Schmidt?
From the outside, I would.
Off the top of my head, I'd say maybe yes, off the top of my head.
Yeah. Taking out Wilt Chamberlain. If you take Wilt Chamberlain out of that mix.
Career with the Sixers, that's the thing that works against him.
Yeah, so, because he was there with the Philadelphia Warriors and, you could think about the A's going back to the day and all that other stuff. But I would have to say Mike Schmidt is definitely, the top Philly of all time. Then you put him up against I think that Allen Iverson has a little bit of an edge over Dr. J just because of his iconic, how iconic he was. When you think
that's shocking to me, you would say
he was
that.
He was more of a Philadelphia 76er player overall because Dr. J had another identity a little bit with the Nets.
Yeah, but
he won championship.
Philly. He ingrained himself in Philly. But when you think of Dr. J, he couldn't get the chip until he got Moses. You know what I mean? And that's always on his resume that he needed Moses to win the chip. So when you think of Allen literally carried that entire team to one win against.
Okay, Allen Iverson and Mike Schmidt.
Just because of the chip, you'd have to say Schmidt.
Yeah.
I don't know the chat. I just think Mike Schmidt was a model of consistency the whole way through, a model of greatness. Iverson would have his up and down moments battling with Larry Brown, where Brown felt the team could have been.
Oh, do you think Mike Schmidt, he wore the wig on the fields, if you remember, because he was trying. So, there was some moments with Mike Schmidt as well, that, like I said, I as a very young kid, I remember that. It wasn't always, great for Mike. he was.
Who was
had
it
a
always
tough
pray
time.
for, though, Pags? I mean, the fans in Philadelphia, and they're smart fans. I'm not taking anything away from it. They're hard. They're tough.
Yes.
I mean, who did escape that wrath from time to time? Was there anybody that really did?
Chase Utley.
Chase
For
Utley.
some reason or other, Chase Utley was given passes left and right. When he would go through slumps, it would just be like, oh, he's going to get himself out of it. The one thing, so he always played really hard, almost to the point of maybe a touch dirty, and that edge is what endeared him to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And then the world champions, as he expressed it, also kind of did that to him. When I think of stuff like that, and then you turn around and you think of like Jason Kelsey and how he did it, he used that word with so much more class in terms of how it was expressed. Either way, they literally went ahead and said that on live television and radio and everything, and both got away with it with nary a slap on the hand.
Yeah.
Pax, getting back, if you said Bobby Clark, maybe that, he'd be in the equation too.
The problem is that Bobby Clark, like I said, as I start to remember him, once you got past those Stanley Cups and you got him in the 80s, he started to trail off. And then it was they haven't won a cup since then. And that was part of the problem. Like if he was a GM, I mean, he took them to the Stanley Cup a couple of times, but they never was able to get over that hump. Had they won another Stanley Cup at any other time, that may have cemented him as being in that top tier. But without that, I don't think he is.
I think Keith would agree with this. The best combination player/executive of all time, we'd have to say, was Jerry West.
Oh, without a doubt.
No.
So Carlos is saying Utley or Dykstra. Dykstra does not get as much of a pass.
Dykstra doesn't get in the conversation. The greatest ever. I mean, greatest.
No.
Most charismatic, maybe getting the discussion.
So, and I'm friends with Dykstra. I actually have him on my speed dial. So, just I not to talk bad about him, but it was an embodiment of that '93 team. But he straight out said, on live television, that they were taking steroids, because he's like, well, how do you, when a reporter asked, well, what do you attribute this great hitting and stuff like that you guys do? And he says, it's good vitamins. He said that on TV. And, obviously it's Lenny Dykstra. So it's, you could take it a little bit with a grain of salt because he was so charismatic and funny and things like that. But, ultimately he's,
well,
you
Pax,
saw
you're
how the rest of his
partial.
life
So
went.
Keith will have to answer this because you're partial. Keith, I mentioned Lenny Dykstra. What do you think of him? Met or Philly?
A Met.
You think of him more as a Met?
Yeah, a Met. Yeah, and he was a big part. The miniseries that ESPN just did, and it's escaping me, about the '86 Mets. I can't think of the name of it now. Something in Queens. I can't remember the name of it. But he was, some of his pieces of the interviews they did with him were just like, you must watch TV. I mean. And he has a little trouble. I don't know what's going on with him, but maybe it's just his life has caught up with him. But he talks kind of slow, and I don't know if something's happened to him health-wise. I know he's lived a hard life.
That paper route got really tough after baseball.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, he's keeping himself out of trouble right now, and that's really most important. As he's getting older, maybe he's getting a little smarter. Sometimes you shouldn't tweet, things so much, but everybody's got their issues.
A lot of guys got issue, yes.
Well, I don't like this tweeting stuff. I mean, it came out in the news. Nestor Cortez tweeted something long ago. Sometimes someone just tweets something either foolish, taken out of context. People do change over years. They get different viewpoints. So I don't want to hear from a lot of years ago someone tweeted something out, and it could be a
when they're 17 years old.
Years later, right? I mean, imagine someone 8 years old and they tweeted something. And
Josh Allen too. It hurt Josh Allen in the NFL draft because some of the stuff came out that he'd said in high school. And come on, high school kids they don't know anything. They're stupid. Even the smart ones are stupid. So I can't hold that against guys.
And so,
Well, yeah.
If you're saying it still when you're 50, well, then maybe there's a trend there, so.
No, I mean, people do change, and they get silly, and they say stuff, and it annoys me the way, and the people that discover this, it's like they have nothing better to do with their life than to try to look up and get any dirt they can on someone, and they take something out of context, and then it gains momentum by these other idiots keep pointing to it, and it's as if they're looking to destroy someone's life.
Misery loves company, and that's the problem with social
media. In this country,
is that,
for sure.
And that's part of the biggest problem with social media is that that people are unhappy just in general, and when there's drama, they will make sure to create more drama.
And they're the people that are active. The positive people aren't active on Facebook, right? I mean, that's why I told my wife and I had this conversation the other day. Why do I see so many negative tweets? I said, because those are the people that are vocal. The people that are happy aren't going to go out there and say how wonderful their life is day after day after day. But the people are
especially because they get beat up by the people that aren't happy.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah. So why would you want that?
I prime example here. I'm always trying to talk positive about my teams, and I get it's actually the haters that talk the most. Because I'm positive.
They're not haters. If your team's not doing well, they're entitled to criticize the team. Pax, they're not haters.
They can criticize all they want, but it's not the criticism of the team that they're talking. They actually talk at me. They criticize me for being positive about my team.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about the team. It's about me personally.
There's one athlete who would call you a hater, Pax. Russell Westbrook would call you a hater.
Oh, what? Russell Westbrook, absolutely. I don't think Russell Westbrook would talk to me. He'd probably take a swing. He was not very happy with me. He's never been very happy with me. So
I have a gut feeling he's coming to the Sixers. I just
no way. There ain't a chance. There's no chance no way. There's absolutely zero.
Tobias Harris for Russell Westbrook, even up the Lakers.
Never.
I don't think Doc Rivers wants anything to do with him.
Well, you want to talk about weirdness? They were talking about Doc Rivers being traded to the Lakers for a second-round pick. I could see them trying to offer Russell Westbrook for Doc Rivers. And I would not. I'd still not be interested. I would not want him on this team at all. I feel like not only is his skills diminished, is that he's a cancer. He's a cancer. And the reason why the Lakers don't want him is because not only is he a cancer, he's a crybaby cancer. So it's just, and you want to talk about soft.
I don't think it's an attitude thing with Russell Westbrook. I just think it's the nature of how he plays the game. I don't think it's an attitude that he doesn't buy in. I think he buys in, but he's like a locomotive. You need your train to stop locally. It stops, and he's an express train. He keeps on going, and it throws off the chemistry.
Well, yeah, I can agree a little bit, but I don't think he's got it anymore. And the fact that he does, he's probably one of those players that has already played the 2 years past he should have, and he's going to play another 2 years. And all it's doing is it's affecting the way that he's going to be looked at throughout the rest of his life, let alone, to be crying about, you're called Westbrook and you are. My name is just now destroyed because you want to call me Westbrook. Are you kidding me? Yeah. I mean, that's how you defend yourself by saying you're destroying my name, and it's like, come on, like that is so weenie. Like that's the only thing that he's a weenie. He's a mental midget when it comes to stuff like that, and the criticism he cannot handle. He'd never last in Philadelphia. It would get too much. You thought Ben Simmons was bad. Have Westbrook here, and it would be just a disaster, an absolute disaster. Just my opinion.
I want to back up for a second. Something you said there. Did they retain Doc Rivers with the intention of looking to trade him for something?
Well, they didn't retain him. He's still got 3 years of a 5-year deal.
No, they
he'd have trade value. Well,
they didn't fire him because he's still got 3 years of a 5-year deal. They just now finished paying Brown off from his deal, and so I feel that the Harris group is not willing to just throw money away right now. They're spending a lot of money on players that, obviously they're trying to figure out what to do with this $47 million for Harden, whether he's going to opt into that player option or he's going to sign for a 3-year, $30 million deal a year. Which is kind of what you're hearing a little bit now, so that they could go out and get another player. And then, of course, Tobias Harris is the catch in this whole mix, is because he's got this max deal. And has he been living up to that max deal? The talk of him being a little on the softer side is, come up this week. And, of course, everybody's crying about the fact that the Sixers lost.
Yeah. But if Doc took another job and the Sixers let him walk away, they would owe him nothing, correct?
Well, why would
that
Doc
same thing
be
with the
in
trade?
demand
So,
now?
Right.
Keith, why would Doc Rivers be in demand anywhere right now? Isn't his reputation, I don't want to use the word tarnished, but diminished as a coach? I mean, who would want to go out aggressively for Doc Rivers? He'd just be one of several candidates.
Because that's what we do. They rehash coaches until they're absolutely burned out. He still wins games, and he's got a championship under his belt. But
his stock has went down with the Sixers, though.
Yeah, but he's still a player's coach. Yeah. I mean, so the one
is he really a player's coach? I mean,
the one thing that I saw the moment that I was at the Nets game, when the Nets came and Ben Simmons was on the bench, is that when Ben Simmons came over to the Sixers side of the ball, and just was doing for the jump around and just kind of throwing the ball to other people, how Doc, gave him a fist pump and a half a hug and talked to him for a minute. And, and that, I think, you could say whatever you want. And being in Philadelphia, obviously you don't want to talk to the enemy, but that's not how that works. And in the fraternity of basketball, I think that he's held to a higher revere to the players for things of that nature, for being able to, he had Ben Simmons' back better than any other coach that I could think of would have had it, and trying to coddle him as best as possible. And it was the one statement that he said that kind of set Ben Simmons off, was like, well, I don't know if, when he didn't have a good answer, when he was put on the spot after that game 7 against Atlanta, it's like, well, you didn't have my back at that point. I don't want to play for you anymore. I think that was more on Ben Simmons being soft. And I think that it's looked around the league at Ben Simmons as super soft, but that Doc tried to do everything he could to get him to fit in the mix. And that shows to teams like the Lakers that are full of, what's the average age? About 38 years old there on the Lakers. You want a coach that's going to be able to appeal to all of those players and deal with all of those egos and not get in the way.
He traded his son-in-law to the Nets as far as being a player.
Well, he didn't. Morey did. And, obviously those things happen, so.
He'll get
he can come back if he wants.
Keith, give us a Knicks update.
Until he doesn't want one.
Keith, any Knicks update? Any potential Knicks news? Anything out there at all?
Not much new. I mean, they obviously, I think, are working on where they've got so many directions they can go. They're probably working on their draft selection now. The biggest decision was to actually send somebody from the front office to the draft lottery, which is big news in New York. Apparently, who's going? They should make. This is where. Oh my God, the owner's name has just slipped out of my mind.
James Dolan.
Thank you, James Dolan. Again, another guy who doesn't show his face, has wrecked a franchise. He had to go sit there in that dais and let the fans take out their wrath on him, but he'll never do it.
Why do we always blame James Dolan? Okay, maybe he's not the nicest guy, but is he really interfering? But is he really interfering?
I think so. Yes, definitely. I think it's been, again, look at you don't have this type of awful management, awful teams through this long a period of time, unless that's rotting from the head down. It is. And James Dolan, he leaves the Rangers alone. The Rangers compete. He leaves the Rangers alone.
Wait. But if the Rangers didn't win, you'd say, well, it's because of James Dolan. He interferes. If the Knicks were winning, no one would say anything negative about anything about James Dolan.
No, that's not it's not true. I mean, he's done things. Look, just forcing Isaiah Thomas to go coach the team when he was here, which was a mistake that he was here in the first place.
But he's laid off for years.
was a disaster, and he forced Isaiah to go manage the team or coach the team because I'm not going to pay another coach. Got more money than God.
He paid Phil Jackson $12 million a year. That was a dumb move to make.
Another mistake. Unless he was coaching a team, that was a bad
But it
move.
was Phil Jackson. The brand of Phil Jackson was off the charts. You know,
The guy's a great coach.
I
And
can understand the move on the surface, even though I didn't like it. He has Tom Thibodeau's coach. He's not firing Tom Thibodeau. So it's not like he's interfering. Get me another coach.
I don't know that he doesn't want him fired like Carlos does, but
yeah, he's just saying that there's just better coaches in total with the Rangers than there are with the Knicks.
wait a minute. I don't think he was such a big fan of Gallant getting hired in New York, by the way, Carlos. I got to call you out there a little bit.
But he allowed it to take place. Dolan could have stopped that hiring.
He could have, but he leaves the
it.
Rangers alone, and he's got his hands in everything that happens around the Knicks. Charles Oakley can't come to the arena because James Dolan doesn't want him.
Oakley gets in the stands and he's starting to yell in them.
He's a revered figure to the fans, and you can't be banning those types of guys from the. I'm not saying he's a perfect person, but he didn't do anything that ought to get him banned for life from Madison.
No, I agree. He should have tried to work it out with Charles Oakley, but Charles Oakley could be a difficult individual.
I don't disagree, but what's James Dolan? He's not a difficult individual.
Yeah, when you have that much money and you start to have that much say, of course you're going to be difficult because
he's a petulant child.
Yeah, but he still wants to win, I'm sure. And that's part of the problem. Like you think you have your idea about winning, and then it doesn't actually come to fruition. You start to wonder. You start to fight it, you know. And I can imagine that's the problem with a lot of owners. You know, like you think of some of these owners that I feel like when you're an owner of a team, most of the time you want to win, and you want to do everything that you can to win. So you try to formulate a plan based off of how you were able to win in everything else in life. And when that plan doesn't come to fruition in another aspect of your life, you start to get frustrated because you don't know. You know, and with the Rangers, he was able to step away and put other people in place, and maybe he needs to do the same thing with basketball.
Yeah, when he brought Donnie Walsh in here, he let Donnie Walsh run the show until they started to get good, and then he pushed Donnie Walsh out because Donnie Walsh couldn't deal with him anymore.
No, I agree. At that time, you're right, Keith. I'm thinking of the last decade or so.
And he started turning it around. That team was on its way, and he just said that was the beginning of the end.
So I mean, hey, listen. At least they're working on their golf game. I'm sure their golf game is much better than.
Yeah, I'm sure it's awesome right now. I think.
So, Keith, well, thank you very much for coming on for a little bit longer than you were normally on here. But like I said, I'm usually the one that's backing you up, and
Well, you did a better job filling Mac's shoes than I did filling yours, I'm sure. So you're welcome.
Fills in. He's the Mac and Jack's version of Brett Gaudy. He fills in for all the guys.
I'm sure that excites him tremendously.
Yeah, I'm that good at just to be called that way. I'm perfect. So at least I relief pitch. I could come in and get the three inning save. So
there you go. Goose Gossage, we'll call him. He's the Goose Gossage of the team.
There you go. Perfect. That's a little bit better than what the name he was saying. So, well, thank you very much for coming on, and I'm sure you guys are on Sunday. You come on Sunday as well.
Yep, I'll be on Sunday with the stream account. I do come up with these guys at 8:10, yes, and I have my own show at 9 o'clock, and we have a lot of fun Sunday mornings too.
There you go. So find Keith on TGI Sports. He's on there all the time. That background gets a lot of play. I'm always seeing it up there on Facebook.
Awesome.
And so awesome. Thanks, Keith, for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Have a good weekend. Keith.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. And here we are. See, look at how quickly 2 hours passed by, Jack, and we were unsure how this was going to go.
Yeah, I always love talking sports on the shows, and then I get a call sometimes late on a friend, and he wants to talk sports. So I like my best sports talk to be for these shows. I don't know how good it is, but it goes back and forth.
Yeah, I'm in that same boat. Sometimes I think that, I've got a lot to say, and other times I realize how much I don't have to say. So, but everybody, thank you very much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. And make sure to tune in tomorrow where Mac will be back to talk sports with Jack. And I think tomorrow is their debate show. So, I'm sure that it's a flowered shirt by Jack, and Mac is going to have a lot to say, trying to cut Jack off all the time. So I let Jack kind of go a little bit today.
Yeah,
so.
you gave me some rope. I was surprised, Pags. It's not like you. You let me go on and on. You were countering. You were trying to catch me in a mistake. I know you were listening.
Yeah, sometimes, but you were pretty good today, so no mistakes. But again, tune in tomorrow. Thanks for everybody tuning in, and we'll see you later.
Okay, great job, Pags. All the best.